Behind the concrete walls of Kgosi Mampuru Correctional Center lies some of South Africa's most notorious criminals, home to killers, masterminds, too dangerous for the outside world. These are the top 10 most dangerous inmates ever held inside Kgosi Mampuru Prison. Number 10. Ananas Mathe. To understand the level of danger that Ananas Mathe posed, you only have to look at one undeniable fact. He is the only person in history to successfully break out of the ultra-secure Supermax section of Kgosi Mampuru. Mathe wasn't just a criminal. He was a highly trained, specialized military operative from Mozambique who turned his lethal skills toward a reign of terror in South Africa, committing serial rape, armed robbery, and hijacking. When he was first thrown into Pretoria's Supermax, authorities believed they had locked away a beast that could never be freed. But in November 2006, Mathe pulled off the impossible. Dubbed the Vaseline Escape, he covered his entire body in petroleum jelly and managed to squeeze his way through a tiny, high-up window, measuring just 20 centimeters by 60 centimeters, and escaped. He then used a rope made of bedsheets to climb down the massive prison wall and vanish into the night. The escape triggered a massive, high-priority nationwide manhunt. Mathe was eventually hunted down and shot in the leg during a high-speed chase, putting him back in handcuffs. Realizing that Kgosi Mampuru could no longer guarantee his confinement, the Department of Correctional Services made a drastic move. They transferred him to the newly built Bongani Supermax prison in Kokstad, the most secure prison in the country. He remained locked down there in solitary confinement until his death in 2016, leaving behind a legacy as the one man who proved that even Pretoria's most secure concrete tomb had a weak spot. Number 9. Eugene de Kock. Some men are dangerous because of their chaotic violence. Others are terrifying because they are highly disciplined, cold-blooded, and backed by the power of the state. Meet Eugene de Kock. To the public, he was a decorated police colonel. But behind closed doors, he was the commander of Maxprison, a covert, apartheid-era death squad. He was called Prime Evil, and for over a decade, his word was a death sentence for anyone who dared to oppose the regime. De Kock didn't just pull triggers, he engineered terror. He was the mastermind behind kidnappings, brutal torture, and targeted assassinations using parcel bombs and close-range executions. When the apartheid government collapsed, de Kock's crimes were finally dragged into the light. In 1996, he was convicted on 89 charges, including murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and kidnapping. The judge sentenced him to 2 life terms, plus a staggering 212 years in prison. De Kock was thrown into the maximum security wing of Pretoria Central, now Kgosi Mampuru. For nearly 2 decades, the man who once held the power of life and death over thousands sat in a tiny, isolated cell. He became the prison's most infamous ghost, a symbol of a dark and bloody past locked away in concrete. Despite his terrifying history, de Kock was quietly granted parole in 2015 after serving 20 years, stepping out of the shadows of Pretoria Central and into a life of hidden, state-monitored obscurity. Number 8. Seifo Thala. In the mid-1990s, a dark shadow fell over Mount Edgecombe and Phoenix in KwaZulu-Natal. Women were vanishing without a trace, leaving a community paralyzed by fear. The monster stalking them was Seifo Thala. To his neighbors, he was just an ordinary local man. But to the women he lured into the endless, towering sugarcane fields, he was a cold-blooded predator who would earn one of the most hated nicknames in South African history, the Phoenix Strangler. Thala's method was as cruel as it was calculated. He preyed on vulnerable women looking for domestic work, promising them employment. Once he lured them deep into the isolated sugarcane, he targeted women, assaulted them, and ultimately murdered them, often using their own clothing or underwear as the murder weapon through strangulation. To cover his tracks and destroy any DNA evidence, Thala would set the sugarcane fields on fire, leaving behind burned crime scenes that haunted investigators for years. His reign of terror finally ended in 1997 when a survivor managed to escape his grasp and identify him. Forensic breakthroughs linked his DNA to the crime scenes, and in 1999, Thala was convicted of 16 murders and 10 rapes. The judge handed him an astronomical sentence, 506 years in prison. He was locked away in the high-security Supermax wing of Kgosi Mampuru, a concrete fortress designed to keep South Africa's most vicious serial killers entirely cut off from the world they terrorized. Number 7. Oscar Pistorius. Before he was an inmate, he was a global phenomenon. Oscar Pistorius, the Blade Runner, was a double amputee who made history by competing against able-bodied athletes in the 2012 London Olympics. He was South Africa's golden boy, an inspiring symbol of triumph over adversity. But on Valentine's Day in 2013, that golden image shattered into a million pieces inside a locked bathroom. Pistorius fired 4 shots through his bathroom door, killing his girlfriend, model and law graduate Reeva Steenkamp. He claimed he had mistaken her for an intruder. What followed was a sensational, televised trial that gripped the entire world. In 2014, he was initially convicted of culpable homicide and sent straight to Kgosi Mampuru Correctional Center. But the state appealed, and the conviction was upgraded to murder, ultimately landing him a 13-year and 5-month prison sentence. Because of his disability, prison officials initially placed Pistorius in the hospital wing of Kgosi Mampuru for his own safety. The former Olympic champion, who once stayed in 5-star hotels and ran on world-class tracks, was confined to a tiny, sterile cell under constant watch. He was eventually transferred to Atteridgeville Correctional Center to serve the bulk of his time. After serving more than 8 years, Pistorius was quietly released on strict parole in January 2024, but his fall from grace remains one of the most shocking tragedies in modern history. Number 6. Clive Derby-Lewis. Some criminals pull triggers to end a single life. Others pull them to ignite a civil war. In April 1993, South Africa stood on a knife edge, delicately transitioning away from apartheid. That was when Clive Derby-Lewis, a prominent right-wing member of parliament, decided to orchestrate a strike straight at the heart of the nation. His target? Chris Hani, the charismatic leader of the South African Communist Party and a beloved anti-apartheid icon. Derby-Lewis was the mastermind behind the plot. He didn't pull the trigger himself. Instead, he acquired an unlicensed pistol and handed it to a Polish immigrant named Janusz Walusz, along with Hani's home address. On April 10th, Walusz shot Hani dead in his driveway. The assassination sent shockwaves through the country, sparking widespread riots that nearly pushed South Africa into a bloody racial conflict. It took a historic live televised address from Nelson Mandela to calm the nation and keep the peace. Derby-Lewis was captured, convicted of conspiracy to murder, and sentenced to death. When South Africa abolished the death penalty, his sentence was commuted to life behind bars. He was thrown into Pretoria Central, now named Kgosi Mampuru Prison. For 22 years, he remained one of the prison's most high-profile and controversial inmates. He was later diagnosed cancer, battling advanced lung cancer. He was finally granted medical parole in 2015 and died the following year, leaving behind a legacy as the man who nearly burned the nation to the ground. Number 5. Bongani Moyo. Most bank robbers rely on raw violence, heavy firearms, and explosive speed. But Zimbabwean-born criminal Bongani Moyo had a weapon that was far more dangerous to South African authorities, an uncanny ability to make high-security prisons look like they had revolving doors. Linked to over 35 bank robberies across the country, Moyo wasn't just a threat to financial institutions. He was a walking embarrassment to the entire Department of Correctional Services. In 2011, while sitting in the Pretoria Magistrates Court, he did something mind-boggling. He simply stood up from his bench, walked past police officers without his crutches, and strolled straight out of the front door. He wasn't even wearing handcuffs. Just a few weeks earlier, he had escaped from Boksburg prison. He was a ghost, slipping out of secure facilities by exploiting lax guards and pure, audacious confidence. The public was outraged, and the police were humiliated. After a massive manhunt, Moyo was recaptured near the Zimbabwean border and thrown straight into the ultra-secure Supermax section Kgosi Mampuru. Even there, he tried to escape again by hacking through his cell window bars. He was eventually sentenced to 62 years in prison. Today, behind the unbreakable walls of Pretoria's most secure facility, Moyo remains locked down under maximum security, a stark reminder that some inmates require 24-hour vigilance just to keep them inside the building. Number 4. Radovan Krejcir. Most inmates in South African prisons are local street criminals, but some are international fugitives with millions of dollars at their disposal. That was Radovan Krejcir, a notorious billionaire mob boss from the Czech Republic. Krejcir fled his homeland in 2007 and arrived in South Africa. Within years, he systematically seized control of the Johannesburg underworld, turning the city into a playground for drug trafficking, high-profile hits, and ruthless torture. To Krejcir, laws were merely suggestions, and prison guards were simply commodities to be bought. When he was finally arrested and convicted in 2016 for kidnapping and attempted murder, authorities assumed the threat was contained. They were dead wrong. Even from inside his cell, Krejcir used his massive wealth to orchestrate chaotic escape plots. Police intercepted a cinematic plan where he tried to smuggle a firearm, tactical police uniforms, and even hired a private helicopter to break him out of prison. Realizing the extreme danger of his escape plans and his ability to corrupt staff, the department placed him under maximum lockdown in Kgosi Mampuru Supermax section, and eventually shifted him under heavy military guard to Bongani Supermax prison. Krejcir remains one of the most heavily guarded inmates in South Africa, a man so wealthy and connected that he is treated not just as a prisoner, but as an active national security threat. Number 3. Rosemary Ndlovu. We trust the police to protect us from predators, but what happens when the predator is wearing the badge? Meet Nomia Rosemary Ndlovu, a former South African police officer who swore an oath to serve and protect. Instead, she used her insider knowledge of the law to orchestrate a gruesome, multi-year killing spree. She wasn't hunting strangers on the street. She was systematically hunting her own flesh and blood, all for a payout. Between 2012 and 2018, Ndlovu secretly took out life and funeral insurance policies on her relatives without their knowledge. Once the paperwork cleared, they began to die in bizarre, violent ways. Her cousin, her sister, her boyfriend, and even her own nieces and nephews. For 6 years, she played the grieving relative, collected over 1.4 million rand in payouts, and used her police status to deflect suspicion. Her greed was her undoing. In 2018, she tried to hire a hitman to take out her sister and 5 children in their home. The hitman, horrified by the plan, went straight to the police. An undercover sting caught her on camera detailing the plot, sealing her fate. In 2021, Ndlovu was sentenced to 6 consecutive life terms. Locked away inside Kgosi Mampuru Correctional Center, she remains one of the country's most unsettling inmates, a cold, calculating sociopath who traded the lives of her own family for cold, hard cash. Number 2. Thabo Bester. Most inmates are confined by concrete, steel, and high walls, but for Thabo Bester, a prison cell was simply a staging ground for his most brilliant and twisted illusion. Bester was a master con artist who used social media to trap, rob, and attack young, aspiring models. In 2012, he was convicted of murder and rape and locked away. But Bester's story didn't end behind bars. It was actually just beginning. In May 2022, prison authorities reported that Bester had died in a tragic fire inside his cell at the Mangang private prison. The case was closed. But a year later, a shocking photo went viral on South African social media. It showed a man shopping in an upscale supermarket in Sandton. He looked identical to Bester. The terrifying truth soon unraveled. Bester wasn't dead. He had smuggled a corpse into his cell, set it on fire to fake his own death, walked out of the prison disguised as a guard, and escaped. Following a massive international manhunt, Bester was recaptured in Tanzania and flown back to South Africa under heavy armed escort. This time, the state took no chances. They threw him straight into Kgosi Mampuru. Today, Bester resides in a single cell under 24-hour video surveillance, guarded by elite tactical officers. He remains a chilling example of a modern manipulative criminal who proved that no prison wall, lock, or guard could hold him, making him one of the most dangerous minds in South African history. But even the fortress of Supermax wasn't enough to keep the state's mind at ease. Fearing his unmatched ability to manipulate prison staff and orchestrate another escape, authorities made a drastic, final move. transferring Bester to the Bongani Supermaximum Correctional Center in Kokstad. Locked in the most secure, isolation-heavy Supermax facility in South Africa, the master manipulator is now kept in absolute solitary confinement, proving that for a ghost like Bester, only the tightest cage in the country will do. Number 1. Moses Sithole. At the very top of our list is a man whose sheer cruelty and staggering body count earned him a place among the most prolific and feared serial killers in human history. Meet Moses Sithole. In the mid-1990s, he unleashed a reign of terror across Pretoria, Johannesburg, and Cleveland that left the entire nation paralyzed with fear. He didn't just break the law, he tore the social fabric of South Africa apart. Sithole preyed on desperate women looking for employment. Posing as a businessman or a charity worker, he would lure his victims to remote, vacant fields with the promise of job interviews. Once they were isolated, his charming facade vanished. He would brutally assault them and murder them. He mocked investigators by calling them from public payphones, boasting about his crimes. By the time he was caught, he had claimed the lives of 38 women and committed 40 rapes. In 1997, Sithole was handed an unimaginable sentence: 2,410 years in prison, with the judge declaring he must serve at least 930 years before even being considered for parole. He was thrown into the maximum security depths of Pretoria Central, now called Kgosi Mampuru. Because of his legendary status and the threat he posed to others, he was kept under the absolute tightest security, locked away forever as a reminder of the darkest chapter in South Africa's criminal history.